Ladies and gentlemen of Middle-earth, I'm Ryan the Cyber Hobbit, and in this video I'm going to be making a 15-foot diorama of the Shire. Or, well, at least attempting to. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've never done anything like this before. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I sort of have a plan. I will be using the Weta Workshop Hobbit Holes. If you don't know what these are, they're Weta Workshop, the people who made the Lord of the Rings films, made these little miniature replicas of all the Hobbit Holes. Well, I say all. They've released, I think, about 22 Hobbit Holes. I think they're actually like 40-something total, but they plan on, I think, continuing to make more of them. So my Shire is going to incorporate all the current Hobbit Holes, as well as maybe leaving some space for potential new ones in the future. I'm also going to be using the Green Dragon Inn that they released, as well as the Hobbiton Mill Bridge, and last but not least, the probably main star of the Shire diorama I make will be Bag End. Weta released a pretty large, it's like this big or so, replica of Bag End, the home of Bilbo and Frodo. This is not going to be an exact replica of the Shire, it's going to be my own interpretation. The reason I say that is because in my collection room I have no more space. I am absolutely packed with stuff and there just is no room for a 15-foot diorama somehow in this room. What better place to put it than maybe the hallway leading to my collection room? So that being said, again, there's a lot of interpretation going on here. That's enough rambling for an intro, so let's get to it. So to get started, I taped a bunch of cardboard together and then drew an outline to figure out the initial shape of the diorama I wanted. And I even mapped out where I thought I could put certain Hobbit holes. And because this is going to be a rather long creation, I thought it might be more practical to divide it into 3 sections just to make it easier for myself. So next, off camera, because it's kind of boring, I measured and cut some 2x4 pieces of wood and attached legs that I bought off Amazon to create 3 mini table frames that were sized to hold each of the 3 sections. Next, I bought some 1-inch thick pieces of plywood and transferred the diorama's shape onto them. And then cut out the shape using a jigsaw. After that was done, I sanded the edges smooth and then I gave everything a coat of black spray paint. Next, I took some overhead pictures of all the Hobbit holes laid out on yet another cutout I made with some particle board, so I could bring it into Photoshop on my computer to better plan the design. Since the Hobbit holes all have a flat base, I decided to go with 4 distinct layers so they could easily sit flat, but also still have the hills the Shire is known for. I also then took the time to plan where each Hobbit hole would go, and pre-visualize how a dirt road could connect everything. Now with the design in hand on my phone, I then moved on to creating the foundation of the diorama. In order to keep everything lightweight, I decided to use some XPS foam in combination with a hot wire to sculpt the generic shape that matched my design. Nothing needed to be perfect at this stage, just a generic shape that I can fine-tune later. Once I was satisfied, I glued everything down with a combination of super glue gel and hot glue. Once all the glue had dried, I then did another pass of sculpting with the hot wire and a hot wire hook to create the generic shape of the various ramps that would connect the 4 levels. This did take more time than I thought it would to get it to look right, but I thoroughly enjoyed the process and had a lot of fun doing it. And by the way, if you're cutting XPS foam with a hot wire, be sure to wear a mask. Trust me on this. Once I had sculpted the generic shape of all 3 sections, because I simply can't help myself, it was at this point I decided to make everything much harder and incorporate little LED light posts throughout the diorama to help to bring it a bit more to life. I found some 3mm flickering LEDs on Amazon that simulate a candle flame once they are powered. That way I don't actually have to worry about doing any programming for the LEDs. To make the actual light post, I turned to 3D printing. I took inspiration from a video clip I saw of a banquet tour at the Shire in New Zealand where they showed a light post on the side of a walkway. I created a similar hollow 3D model in Tinkercad that is made up of 3 parts to allow me to easily run enameled wires through the post and fit the flickering LED. After some 3D printing, painting, and soldering, I ended up with 18 of these little light posts. The actual size of the light post ended up being a bit larger in scale than I wanted, but at least there'd be no visible wires anywhere. From there, it was just a matter of carving some trenches within the XPS foam to run the wires to the backside, where I would then solder everything together in parallel. And as with anything in electronics, always test, and then test again. The last thing you want to do is bury your electronics and find out an issue after the fact. I also made each of the 3 sections have both ends use simple plug-in ports that would make it easy to connect and disconnect them for moving the diorama around. With the lighting out of the way, I moved on to finalizing the shape of the terrain. To do this, I used some plaster cloth bandages that you dip in water, and then once set, they harden. This is basically the same thing you use for making a cast if you broke your arm or leg. This not only served as a way to smooth out the terrain, but act as a primer for everything else that's still coming. Once this was in place, I then followed up with a round of Sculptamold to make things like the ramps and various edges look a bit more curved and natural. Once everything had dried, I then painted all 3 sections in a dirt brown color, so that once I get to adding grass and vegetation, any gaps I leave would show the brown and it would just look like dirt. Next came the part that I had actually been looking forward to the most, covering everything in static grass. If you've never heard of static grass, it's made from tiny nylon fibers that are cut into very short lengths, usually only a couple of millimeters, and then colored to mimic the appearance of grass. The way it works is you apply glue where you want your grass, and then using static electricity, the grass is made to stand upright to create a realistic grass effect, but on a tiny scale. You do this by the use of a static grass applicator, basically a battery-powered tool that has a container with a metal mesh connected to the negative side of a battery. Then you have a wire that runs out of the tool that you touch to the area where you want your grass applied. This creates an electric field between the applicator and your diorama, causing the fibers to stand up as they are attracted to the positive side of your diorama. It feels like magic, but really it's just science, and was really cool to do in person. I applied several layers of different sizes and colors, starting with 2mm followed by 6mm. After all the glue had dried, I shook off the excess and then moved on to making the dirt roads. For the dirt roads, I actually bought dirt online. I know that's weird, but I wanted consistent dirt, so I found that was just the easy way to go. I mostly ended up using Warworld Scenic's Fine Army Sand, but it was nice to have these other 2 to mix it up. Using a spoon, I slowly poured the dirt into my already planned paths, occasionally using a small brush to push the tiny rocks to the edge of the dirt, as that would happen naturally from walking on it. After I was satisfied with the look, I sprayed some watered-down PVA glue to solidify the path, and then moved on to the final step of adding the vegetation. Finally, to make it look a bit more Shire-like, I bought a variety of different self-adhesive colored flowers, grass patches, shrubs, bushes, trees, and rocks, and added them randomly all around the diorama with a combination of super glue and hot glue. Where I could, I attempted to match the flowers with the colors I would see on the Hobbit Holes, as well as using some of the shrubs to attempt to make some of the paths look not so easy to fall off. After that, it was just a matter of attaching the diorama base to the wall so it doesn't fall over easily, adding in all the Hobbit holes, and then connecting the wires together of the 3 sections. I also 3D printed a little box to hold the power cords and smart plugs under the base, as well as 3D printed a little mount for a Philips Hue play bar light that casts different colored light onto the diorama depending on the time of day. I set a smart schedule to have the light cast as a daylight color during the day, and around 6 PM at night it switches to a moon color and turns on all the light posts. After that, it was done. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. Until next time, bye bye.